Thursday, the 11th of July, day 279 of the October 7th war. Firstly, on our hostages, Hamas still holds 120 hostages, men, women, children, and the elderly, from 24 nations enduring horrific abuse for 9 months now. Yesterday, I reminded you about Naama Levy, age 19, taken hostage. Today, I want to remind you that Agam Berger, also just 19 years old, is also still being held there. You know, just in the last 2 weeks, Agam, known to her family as Gigi, her family had been looking at Gigi's personal diary just to get some sense of consolation from this horrific time they are going through. Her family found these words from just a few months before her abduction. Gigi wrote in her own hand in her diary, and I quote, "Do not confine me in any cage, not physical nor spiritual." Gigi added, "God will accompany me in every step." Now, it's thought that she drew inspiration from practically the same words from the early 20th century Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook. The Hamas video of her abduction shows the terror monsters shouting at her and her friends. Gigi's face is bloodied and bleeding. Her mum and dad, Merav and Shlomi Berger, together with her cousin, have led the campaign to free her with nobility and with dignity. Our message to media is, look at her, put her in your pieces, mention her by name. Agam Berger, 279 days. Israel will not rest until all 120 are brought home, Hamas are eliminated, together with their terrorist threat to Israel, and we will return our residents securely to their homes in the south and the north. To UNRWA now. Yesterday, I appeared on a BBC NewsHour radio news programme and said that UNRWA was not a force for good in Gaza. We have provided much evidence that UNRWA works hand in hand with Hamas, the Hamas server farm underneath the UNRWA HQ, the UNRWA employees who took part in the October 7th massacre, Hamas's tunnels underneath UNRWA-run schools, the Hamas terrorists using UNRWA schools as shelters, the UNRWA employees that took hostages into their homes. In the same radio program, Sam Rose, UNRWA's director of planning, said that he had seen no evidence and refuted the evidence. The State of Israel yesterday named 100 employees of UNRWA who are members of Hamas. They must be fired immediately. This is just a fraction of the true number of UNRWA workers also in Hamas. We gave this evidence again and again to UNRWA. Israel also sent the names to countries that fund UNRWA. Many, like the US and the UK, froze their funding to UNRWA after October the 7th. Now, Israel has told donor countries that hundreds more of UNRWA's 13,000 local staff are active Hamas terrorists, including school head teachers. This is a test case for the future of UNRWA. Now, yesterday, Sam Rose of UNRWA's director of planning refuted this evidence. He said there's no evidence, and he also refuted the evidence. Mr. Rose, you do not tell the truth, sir. So our message to media is, when using Sam Rose as your on-the-ground expert, please introduce him as Sam Rose, spokesman for Hamas. UNRWA are useless at aid distribution. UNRWA are useless at education, except glorifying suicide bombers and encouraging Jew killing. And Israel sees no role whatsoever for UNRWA in Gaza after this war ends. Now an update from COGAT and their work coordinating aid into Gaza over the last 24 hours. 261 trucks carrying humanitarian goods went in, 248 trucks via Kerem Shalom, 13 trucks via Erez, a convoy of 34 trucks and fuel tankers entered Gaza via Gate 96. 6 tankers of fuel and 6 tankers of cooking gas went in for essential needs. 31 pallets, which is 5.58 tons, were airdropped over Gaza. We will continue expanding our efforts to facilitate humanitarian aid into and across Gaza. But of course, 1,150 trucks are still awaiting collection from the Gazan side of Kerem Shalom border crossing, waiting for UNRWA to get their act together. You know, no other country would supply so much food to an enemy entity who started this war, refuses to stop fighting, and refuses to release our civilian hostages. We do it, of course, to feed ordinary Gazans. So that's the end of our briefing today. I will now take your questions, which you should put in the chat, together with your news outlet. Thank you very much. First question here is from David Clement from the News Forum. The United Nations is stressing that very little aid is getting to Palestinians from the Kerem Shalom border crossing. Can you give an update on how much aid is crossing at that border, and is the breakdown on the Gaza side? Thank you very much for that question, David. I gave a full briefing just a couple of moments ago about the number of trucks going in. At the media briefing yesterday at Kerem Shalom, Kogat made very clear that one of the issues is the lack of trucks at the disposal of UNRWA, not because of any restrictions, because UNRWA does not bring in more trucks. Why? To perpetuate this conflict, because feeding Gazans is not good for the Hamas cause. UNRWA and Hamas are one and the same organization. Next question from Gidi Kleinman from the BBC. Can you confirm reports that the Israeli delegation has returned to Israel from Doha? Thank you very much for that question, Gidi. We, of course, understand why you are asking it. These negotiations are absolutely key. We will not be giving a running commentary on the ins and the outs of these negotiations. The Prime Minister met yesterday at his office in Jerusalem with President Biden's special envoy for the Middle East, Brett McGurk. The Prime Minister has emphasized his emphasis to a deal as long as Israel's red lines are preserved. And we have, of course, shared those red lines with you. Next question from Joel Pollack at Breitbart News. Firstly, can you confirm that arms manufacturers in the West are slowing deliveries to Israel or refusing to respond to inquiries? Thank you, Joel. No, I've got nothing to say on that. I've got no evidence that that's the case, is the answer to your question. And number two, can you confirm a report by David Ignatius in the Washington Post that Hamas and Israel have agreed to a framework for a ceasefire and a hostage deal that includes a PA-linked force governing Gaza? Thank you for that question, Joel. These are extremely sensitive topics. Lives literally hang in the balance. I've told you about some of the negotiation issues just a little bit earlier. Perhaps I can be more specific about these ongoing negotiations for a hostage release deal. I want to remind you that this is the same framework agreed by Israel, which has been supported by President Biden. As always, Israel's objectives are to enable the return of our hostages without obstructing the other goals of this war. Now, in these negotiations, the Israeli position is to insist on already agreed upon principles. Among them is the option to return to fighting until all the goals of the war are met, the prevention of smuggling ammunition from Egypt into the Gaza Strip, which is a vital lifeline, an absolutely key issue, supplying Hamas with their deadly munitions. We're going to put an end to that. The prevention of the return of thousands of armed terrorists to the north of the Gaza Strip, and maximizing the number of living hostages that return from Hamas captivity. Again and again, it's been Hamas that has walked away from a potential deal, and again, Israel has made it clear that this war will end when all of our goals are met: the return of our hostages, dismantling of Hamas's governmental and military capabilities, and of course, removing the terrorist threat to Israel. The next question here is from Hannah Julian of the Jewish Press. Hannah writes that US officials say that the White House is releasing half of a shipment of 550-pound bombs, but is still holding back the other half of the shipment and an entire shipment of 2,000-pound bombs. Can you comment and also tell us what else, if anything, is being held up? Thank you for that question, Hannah. Our Defence Minister, Yoav Gallant, put out a statement just before we came on, about 2 p.m., 1:58 p.m. To be precise. And in that statement, after his meeting with Brett McGurk, President Biden's envoy to the Middle East, he made clear some of those issues, not with the specificity, that you require, but he did refer to those issues nonetheless. The Prime Minister has made clear on this issue. He quoted Winston Churchill to a former US President Roosevelt. He said, "Give us the tools to finish the job," and the Prime Minister paraphrased that Churchill comment just a little bit by saying, "Give us the tools to finish the job and we'll finish it much quicker." Next question here is from Jim Williams of Zenga. Are there any updates on the situation of the displaced Israelis in the north? It's been some time since the last update amidst all the other ongoing events. Thank you for that question, Jim. More than 100,000 of our people, just from the north alone, have been displaced. We saw the case yesterday of the direct hit on two civilians' car, a husband and a wife, who leave behind their 3 teenage children. An absolutely tragic case here in Israel, doing nothing wrong, those Israelis, but simply driving on the road. Their car received a direct hit from a Hezbollah rocket. Look, Israel will continue to operate in response to this Hezbollah aggression. We will use all means necessary to restore security on our northern border and safely return all of our citizens to their homes. We know that the state of Lebanon and Hezbollah terrorist organization, which of course is operating under the guidance of Iran, bear full responsibility to the deterioration of the security situation in our north. More than 6,700 rockets, causing fires in 177,500 dunams of land in our north, forests, nature reserves, arable land, farmland, all of this in violation of Security Council resolutions 1559 and 1701. One way or another, through diplomacy or through military action, our northern border will be secured, this country will be defended, and Hamas and Hezbollah, will be pushed back to the Litani River. Next question here is from Fred Ager. Hamas reports that 38,345 Palestinian deaths since October 7th attack on Israel, including 15,000 gunmen killed in battle and 1,000 inside Israel. Can you remind us of the official numbers you have of Hamas and Hezbollah operatives killed by the IDF thus far? Thank you for that question. Let me share with you some of these issues, some of the numbers I shared with you yesterday, the latest briefing which we've had and was given by Defense Minister Gallant. He said that 60% of Hamas terrorists had been either killed or injured and therefore taken off the battlefield, 60%. We talked about the region of 14,000 terrorists having been killed, and I think those are the main figures that I can share with you right now. Okay, I think that's the last question. So with that, Thank you very much for joining us. Please do stay safe, and we look forward to the next briefing, which is scheduled to be on Monday now. Thank you very much. Bye bye now.